So someone who is now blocked tagged me in one of their posts to let me know that these two were actually not, Aztecs, that they're part of a circus and that the ringleader, the ringmaster, actually made up this entire, fantastical story about them for entertainment value to, the paying patrons. And, I do appreciate that person for letting me know that. However, that still doesn't explain the hair. And I still stand on my points, one of which was, and I've said this in the past, just because somebody else comes and gives you a different name doesn't mean that the whole history that you've just had previously goes away. So if El Salvador was founded in like 1821, whose were these people's parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents and so on and so forth, who I assume lived in what we now know as El Salvador or somewhere in that area? What were they called before El Salvador came into existence? Because you can go to El Salvador now and see Mayan pyramids. So yeah, these people may not have been so-called Aztec or whatever, but to be honest with you, like I've said in previous videos, you have foreigners that come in and give names to the same people just because they've lived in different time frames or because they had different cultures and technology. Is literally the same people that have just split up into different groups, and they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to have their own language, or they wanted to have their own culture, whatever. But it's the same group of people. It's not, they didn't evolve out of each other and created a whole new type of person. So if you can still go and see Mayan pyramids and ancient Mayan architecture in El Salvador today, then who were the descendants of these people before El Salvador was created? This person also did not address the hair. Once again, if you have been in this continent, or actually, no, you haven't. Because if you came over from Asia, then came to North and South America, how'd you get hair like this? And nobody mixed with you. Then they'll say, well, we mixed with the African slaves. But there's literal, I'm not going to keep showing you guys this because that's what I make all these videos for. That's what I post screenshots of these books and gives you the title of these books and the diaries and the notes and the government documents for. They were describing what these people looked like. They said they had coarse hair that grew up in the air before the Africans came and started mixing. And I already said they could not have brought no 10 million Africans because you're going to empty out the place that you just took all these people from. You think West Africa was that populated to take 10 million people? And then most of them died? And if that's the case, how come we look so different from the Africans? So we almost all of us were just mixing with the Caucasians to look like me. Is that what you're saying? Because that's what happened. They're saying that's what happened. These people somewhere down the line had to be pretty recent. Somewhere down the line, apparently they mixed with Africans, and that's how they got afros. Because that's something else that they'll say to try to get around the fact that these people already had that. And from what I know, the Asians that they're showing us that migrated over here did not have afros or dark skin or thick noses and thick lips. So how did you go from this to what the indigenous people looking like? Why don't you have hair like this? Okay, thank you for pointing out that these people had microcephaly and that apparently they're from El Salvador and not Mayans. That my question is, who were you before you were an El Salvadorian? Like, who were we before we were Negroes? They can't even tell us where we came from Africa. But I have literal government documentation records saying that I never came from Africa. My family never came from there. We was always here. My great grandparents, everybody telling me and us. So any brown people go to their elders and they're going to tell you the same thing unless you really did come from Africa. And if you did, they'd be able to tell you where, and you'd have family over there. So you're not going to just cherry pick one thing. I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I can say to disprove what she's saying. So I'll just say, oh, well, they have microcephaly. They weren't really Aztecs. The guy made that up. Okay, great. But could it be that actually really they were a descendants of some type of indigenous people? Because the person didn't deny that. Come like El Salvador didn't just exist and pop up and now there's new people who have no history or whatsoever popped up. No, they were already there and they're just giving a new name. Like we were already here and they decided, you know what? We're not going to call you Indian no more. We're going to call you Negroes. And if you want benefits, then you have to identify as African. And that's going to be another video. How back then, in order to get us to basically forget and lie about our heritage, they said, well, you can only be Caucasian or African. You cannot identify as one of those two. I'm sorry, white or African, not Caucasian, because it's a status thing. You can either be white or you can be African, but you can't be Indian. And if you do, we'll kill you. That's what they were literally killing any bronze person who identified as American Indian, even with proof, because they didn't give a shit about if you have proof. They don't want you to know your real identity, and they were willing to murder you for it. And that goes back to my other question. Why did these people leave El Salvador? Wasn't everything fine and dandy down there? What were they fleeing from? Poverty? Was it murder? I remember in my YouTube channel, Ethnic American channel, when I went on in that book called God Against the Indians, they were talking about how they created this, Indian Preservation Society or whatever that was supposed to help the indigenous Americans, but it was really a front for them to go send in soldiers to just slaughter them all. They basically it's like, oh yeah, we got a a group to help you guys out, and they come in and kill them, give them poison food and poison candy. That was in the 1900s. What makes you think they weren't doing something like that in the 1800s? I think we forget about how savage these foreigners were that were coming over here. They wanted this land so bad they're willing to kill for it. I'm still, I'm still gonna stand on my point that a lot of these people fled to North America and they did whatever they could to survive and to get away from the persecution they were facing where they were living at. Whether it was joining the circus, getting a job, whatever they needed to do. Because they sure as hell didn't go back to El Salvador. They stayed and they traveled the world in the circus. So I'll take down my previous video because there was some wrong information on it, but I stand on all of the points that I made.